saw the news reports, they had our sign at our bridge that said Black Hollow, and that's how we knew it was our place.
The cleanup starts in Larimer County before all the missing have been found. Tonight we take you inside the rush to warn people that water and mud were coming fast. We ask the Interior Secretary if she can help with the search for Indigenous children's graves at schools in Colorado. Doctors are not surprised that vaccinated Coloradans are catching COVID, and they say it's no reason to doubt that the vaccines work. And what's wrong with this picture? A few things, thanks to people who don't know how to Colorado. Next. One of the dangers of this week's mudslide and flash flooding in Poudre Canyon, and one of the dangers of the next mudslide and flash flood in Colorado, is that they so often happen in remote places, spots where our cell phones don't work. That's part of the appeal of going there. It meant that they had to take a door-to-door warning approach in Larimer County, and they may have to next time. Here's Mark Salinger.
The sound of water used to bring peace.
It's where we come to get away from all the city life and the craziness, yes.
Now all Susan Bonn-Philpott can think about is its power.
It's overwhelming. You can't even imagine what it used to look like.
Black Hollow Road sits buried under much of what the Cameron Peak fire left behind last summer. Mixed in the middle are homes, memories, and search and rescue crews fear a missing family.
Seeing the backhoe on our bridge and the house roofs at our bridge, and it's pretty overwhelming.
A woman and two men are still missing after heavy rain caused a flash flood in the burn scar. Susan found out her home was in danger when friends started texting her while she was away from her house.
What I saw on the news doesn't even compare to what it is in reality.
She found out Thursday her home is still standing. The National Weather Service issued a flash flood warning at 5:24 p.m. on Tuesday evening. 41 minutes later, the NWS says logs, rocks, and water took over parts of the Poudre Canyon. David Moore with the Larimer County Sheriff's Office says deputies rushed in to tell people to get out.
We actually send deputies to every area to knock on doors, and in this particular case, go to every campsite.
When the flash flood warning goes out, it's broadcast immediately on TV, on the National Weather Service website, and through NOAA weather radios that don't require cell phone service. The 911 authority in Larimer County also sent out alerts to every phone in the area through texts and calls.
Then when we saw the news reports, they had our sign at our bridge that said Black Hollow, and that's how we knew it was our place.
Each person found out the danger was coming in a different way. Now Susan hopes time and some hard work will bring peace back to her neighborhood.
It's a good sound because it's progress.
It takes about an hour driving up this far deep into the canyon, and for most of that time there's very little cell phone service. That's why it's so important to get those emergency alerts in different ways other than a phone in places as remote as this. For Next, I'm Mark Salinger.
One final note, the folks in charge of sending emergency alerts in Larimer County said that they have found that sometimes text message alerts will get through even in areas with really spotty cell service. So last year you had the year of fire in Colorado. This year could be the year of mudslides. Another one shut down westbound I-70 at Avon today. And Glenwood Canyon is currently closed again due to the threat of a slide there. America's first Native American cabinet member, Interior Secretary Deb Haaland, is promising a plan to recover indigenous remains from schools like the two in Colorado where Native kids were sent to be stripped of their culture and identity. We asked Secretary Haaland during a stop in Denver today about the potential for searches at former school sites near Grand Junction and Durango.
I think fundamentally we just want to make sure that families today get the information that they've been wanting for decades and decades. And so we're going to work to identify every single boarding school in the country and absolutely find a way to make sure that we're assisting local communities. That will involve a lot of tribal consultation.
The Bureau of Indian Affairs is working on a plan that will be released next spring. Secretary Haaland told us she has not seen the details of that yet.
But this is very personal for me. I did 2 combat tours to Afghanistan as an Army Ranger. I may not be here sitting under this dome talking to you today if it had not been for the service and the sacrifice of the Afghans that served shoulder to shoulder with me.
Afghans who saved American lives, perhaps even the life of now Congressman Jason Crow, are now trying to escape as the Taliban takes control of Afghanistan. The U.S. House today overwhelmingly passed Crow's Allies Act, which expands the visa program to get those Afghans out. A Democrat from Aurora who served in Afghanistan said he may owe his life to those people. Allies Act passed the House, bipartisan majority 407 to 16. Republican Congressman Lauren Boebert was Colorado's only no vote. Her office has not responded to our question about why she voted against the Allies Act. When you hear about breakthrough COVID cases, people testing positive after being fully vaccinated, doctors aren't shocked by that. The state's public health leaders say we shouldn't be surprised if those case numbers rise. Anusha Roy offers some perspective.
One of the most important things to pay attention to is who is coming through these doors. Dr. Zane with UC Health said that there are not a lot of vaccinated COVID patients here. That includes people who tested positive after getting their shots.
We knew all along, like any vaccine, that there were going to be breakthrough cases, but what we really have to keep our eyes on are the people who are admitted to the hospital or die. And luckily, for now, the vaccines are still very effective.
Dr. Zane said an overwhelming majority of breakthrough cases are people who don't have any symptoms, or maybe they just feel lousy but can get better at home, which is the point of the vaccine.
Still doing its job.
Keep that in mind as we go over the numbers.
We know that the vaccines are slightly less effective in preventing the Delta variant, in cases of the Delta variant, but again, they're very effective at preventing severe disease.
It's still in the 80s to 90s percentile. But with that slight drop and a little more basic math, the state health department walked us through what to expect.
As the vaccinated population grows, we do expect that that number of cases that occurs among the fully vaccinated population could grow. And that's simply because there's just more vaccinated people now than there were previously. So we shouldn't be surprised to see that number change over time. And it doesn't mean more vaccine breakthrough diseases necessarily occurring.
The doctors we talked to today said that there are still a few people admitted to the hospital after being vaccinated, but most of the time have other underlying health issues, which is why more than overall caseload, doctors are watching how sick people get as they look to the future.
So what we're hoping for is that the next variant or the variant after that doesn't get even more contagious, doesn't make people even more sick.
The state said that 97% of cases and hospitalizations and deaths across Colorado right now are among those who don't have their shots. And that's a number that they've been gathering since the beginning of the year. Kyle, that's leaving roughly 3% for those breakthrough cases across the state.
So, Anusha, another metric that we used to watch a lot was hospital capacity. It's never low. It's not designed to be low. You don't build hospitals so that they sit empty, but you also don't want it to be too high.
Yeah, so both Denver Health and UC Health today said that right now when it comes to COVID patients that they're doing okay. But like you were mentioning, right, they have a lot of people coming in for other things right now. So they're super busy right now. If overall those systems start to get stressed again, we're going to have a very different conversation coming from the hospitals when it comes to COVID.
All right. Thank you, Anusha. Next is Preempted tomorrow night for the Olympics opening ceremony. We are back on Monday during the Olympics. We air after primetime programming. But before the week ended, I wanted to update you on the status of your Word of Thanks micro-giving campaign. I tried to mention it twice. Since last night, you have raised more than $10,000 for Mi Casa Resource Center. Mi Casa is a nonprofit that helps people from underserved communities, primarily Latinas, turn their skills and talents into their own small businesses. It's entrepreneurship and business education and career retraining. They help women build successful futures for themselves and their families. Hear a lot of chatter these days about people who don't want to work. Mi Casa helps people who badly want to work, who want to grow businesses to employ other people who want to work. Text thanks to 303-871-1491, and I'll send you that link to join me and a whole bunch of Next viewers in supporting Mi Casa and its Latina entrepreneurs. The busiest year for our state parks was also the deadliest one on the water.
At the end of the year, we're like, we can't have another year like that.
And we know Colorado's role in churning out athletes for Team USA. We've also had a hand in the competition venues in Tokyo and how they'll frame up views of a city that Olympic fans won't get to see in person. Next. Under 12 hours now from the opening ceremonies for the Tokyo Games. We plan to be talking to our Matt Renew in Japan, but you know, plans change. So, Matt Renew, we will talk about that in just a moment. First, though, you want to tell us about a company in Denver that's quietly had a hand in shaping what we will see in Tokyo.
You're right, Kyle. This is a pretty cool company. Populous in downtown Denver. They have had a role in the design of some of the most iconic venues and stadiums around Denver, from Ball Arena to obviously Coors Field. I got to tell you, these guys, when it comes to architecture, they got some credentials. Look at that right there. And that's because in Tokyo, they had a hand in the layout and design of the games.
Inside the Tokyo Olympic weightlifting venue,
I'm very excited about the Olympics.
Megan Lux has been helping with the heavy lifting of hosting an Olympic Games.
Here with Populous Japan, working on the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games.
As an architect with Denver-based Populous, Megan and this company.
Here in Denver, what we would like to focus on is not only the architectural side, but major event planning. So we'll plan events such as Olympics.
Have had a hand in the design of every one of the Olympic venues here.
Yes, we have touched all 42 of the competition venues.
Focusing a lot more effort on temporary venues like volleyball.
It's a 100% temporary venue. We'll help design that entire venue ground up.
And those used in brand new Olympic sports.
3-on-3 basketball, sport climbing, skateboarding, surfing.
Unlike past Olympics.
Starting with Tokyo, there's not an Olympic park per se. The city itself is the park.
Tokyo won't have an Olympic park, which is a new cost-cutting model for other cities getting ready to host their own Summer Olympics.
The International Olympic Committee really wants the cities to use their existing assets.
With a push to use temporary venues or sites that have already been built.
There's great opportunity to really take advantage of that and make the Olympics as sustainable as possible.
Like the Glass International Forum weightlifting venue in Tokyo.
One of the premier venues here for Tokyo.
That Megan says should look good on camera and keep Olympic fans pumped while watching the games.
So this is an absolutely gorgeous venue.
A lot of work went into those venues, and while there isn't a Olympic park per se that these architects and designers have put together out there, there is an area, a cluster where a lot of venues are on the island of Odaiba, which is right next to Tokyo. A lot of the venues are there, and that's where we're going to see a lot of the television coverage from these Olympic Games. A lot of the temporary venues there designed specifically to showcase that Tokyo skyline and look good on TV, which is more important than ever now, given that no fans can be at the Olympics, and we're all going to be watching on TV. So, Kyle, in just a short time, opening ceremony, we're going to see how those venues measure up.
Oh, look at you. See, you wouldn't have been able to do that in Tokyo, Matt. You wouldn't have been able to take that in your luggage. No. They restrict you to that one tiny carry-on. I got to ask you, though. So, I mean, obviously, your plan was to go to Tokyo. You'd been there to do preview stories. If you had gone this year and our parent company decided not to send people, it would have been a very different reporting experience than what you've delivered for us from a bunch of other games.
You're absolutely right, Kyle. And there was a lot of thought that went into it, whether we would go or not, and a lot of discussion. Part of it were the restrictions on the media, because there are so many days of quarantine that you have to stay in a hotel or at your workspace, and then you really just can't get out and see the countryside like we've done at so many Olympics. And at this Olympics, you really wouldn't want to do that, which is the other discussion we had. Majority of the population there are against the Olympics right now because they're worried that COVID will spread. And then there's obviously a fourth state of emergency there. And so all of that went into our discussion to not go. And then we've decided that if fans and family of these athletes can't go, that maybe we just stay in Colorado and we'd cover a lot of their stories and try things a little bit different. And it got me on next. So, Kyle, I think it's well worth it.
Well, we look forward to having you quite frequently over the next couple of weeks, telling lots of Colorado-connected Olympic stories just from our home base here. Matt Renew, we'll see you soon. Next is almost 5 years old, and we are finally getting a later bedtime. We're changing time slots during the Olympics. Starting next Monday, Next at Night will be on following primetime Olympic competition each and every weeknight. A record number of drownings in Colorado last year, and the people who run our state parks are pretty sure why it happened. And that is not a dog. Not knowing or not respecting the difference is a fast train to Rabies Town. Next. People People got outside trying all kinds of new things during the pandemic, and sadly, that's thought to be one reason why Colorado saw a record number of drownings last year. 34 people drowned in Colorado's lakes, reservoirs, and rivers. They keep pool drowning numbers separate. Colorado Parks and Wildlife says last year brought record visitation at state parks, and anecdotally, they think people were trying new things on the water and not being safe about it.
We're getting more people getting into kayaking and stand-up paddleboarding, kind of easy activities to get into, or reasonably priced activities. And some, that was their first time getting out and trying those activities. The leading contributing factor to the majority of those drownings, no life jackets. So, getting out there, canoes, kayaks, paddleboards, but not even having a life jacket with them, let alone not wearing it.
Grant Brown with CPW says weather was also a big factor in the drownings they saw last year, particularly wind knocking people into the water. CPW is trying to head off a repeat in 2021 with a new ad campaign, social media messages, and to this point this year, there have been 10 drownings. Feeding the wild coyote pup, bad enough. Then somebody put a leash and a collar on it. It's not how you Colorado. People in Yuma were feeding this young coyote until it lost its natural fear of humans, and families were playing with it on Tuesday when a woman was bitten. She wasn't badly hurt. Now she's got to go through the rabies protocol, but it turns into the ultimate punishment for this poor animal, which was wearing a dog collar and a leash when wildlife workers arrived. They euthanized the animal to test its brain for rabies. Innocent animal lost because people either didn't know how to Colorado or didn't care.
Another hot, hazy day with downtown highs in the mid-90s. Only isolated showers expected along the Front Range tonight. All of the moisture coming into the high country brought temperatures down a little bit, but much of the higher terrain remains under a flash flood watch. Slow-moving storms are producing a half an inch to an inch of rain in Grand County and also in Garfield County. We're tracking the Williams Fork burn scar, the Cameron Pass and Peak burn scar, and also areas in and around the Troublesome. The moisture will move through over the next couple of hours and then start to subside a little bit. And then we get into tomorrow afternoon, and we certainly do have the potential for some of those storms to bring rain right here to Denver. And so through the evening, temperatures out of the 90s into the 80s after sunset. And then we have a cooling trend heading into the weekend. 40% chance of rain from storms both Friday and Saturday, and then temperatures back in the 90s with lots of sunshine through early next week.
We are a full-service newscast around here. You need an answer? We'll find it. Need a funny moment made into a GIF for you to text your friends? We got you covered there, too. Next, GIF Library. And some of the most asinine feedback we've ever received. Next. Finished with your feedback, Jim writes to complain about our profile this week on Colorado's first Latino state historian. The fact that we have a new state historian would not even be mentioned on the news, he writes, except for the fact that she's the first Hispanic. This is racist. What the hell, Jim?
What the hell, Jim?
Chaffee County Commissioner going off on that public meeting. That will never get old. Another viewer, Klaus, reached out recently asking if we could make that moment into a GIF for him. You know, send a text or tweet or whatever. You ask, we deliver. What the hell, Jim, has been added to the library of next GIFs? Oh, you did not know that this exists? Yes, there are dozens of them that you can text or tweet to your friends, family, or your Twitter trolls. Our producer, Aaron, has been compiling them for years. You can find all the next GIFs on our Giphy account, or you can just search for Next with Kyle Clark in Twitter's GIF library. And if there's ever a moment you need of Next in GIF form, let us know. We'll see what we can do. Jeff says, with Next moving to a nighttime time slot, will the wardrobe change? Maybe a smoking jacket? Maybe I'll show up in a plain suit and just read the news in a monotone each night.